All right, greetings everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. Today, we have a techie amongst us. Brent Basham is here with us. He's been a pizza store manager at a point in time in his career. Later, with an affinity towards technology, he moved into technology, went ahead and got a computer science degree, and then ended up establishing a technology firm around podcasts. And the interest in podcasts is because he himself ran one for a couple of years, saw through all the challenges, and then decided to solve the problem of interviews and guests and connecting podcasters and guests. With that said, let's hear his story from Brent himself. Brent, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rajiv. A pleasure.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so you mentioned the pizza background. That doesn't come up often, as you might expect. I started off sort of delivering pizzas out of college the first time around. Didn't really have a passion. I was math and science oriented early on, back right at the cusp of when computing started to be in vogue. It was right around the time AOL was coming out and all of that. So CS degree, computer science degree, sales engineer, all the sort of things we take for granted now wasn't really a thing back then. But because I was math and science oriented, they really push you toward being an engineer. And so I got into college, got a couple years in and didn't really realize consciously, but subconsciously realized I hated it. It just wasn't my thing. So I left school, was bouncing around, did some pizza delivery driving for a while, and then had to sort of do better than that. So I ended up going down a path into managing a pizza unit and then multi-unit management for a while. And I really liked it. The thing I liked about that was the fast pace, and also the people. That was a theme throughout everything that in my life really was people. And then I always kind of had this increasing interest in technology. So after I had kids and we sort of made a real big struggle and difficulties to go back to college and finish up and go ahead and get a computer science degree and shift gears completely. You can imagine going from restaurant management into technology was quite a leap. But it wasn't foreign to me because in my mind, I had always kind of been tech driven. I just didn't have the piece of paper or the experience to get into the field. So I did. And that's kind of what led me to getting into the path I was on now.
Awesome. So where did the whole podcasting come in?
So as I got the degree, I met a gentleman by the name of Andrew Curry when I went back to school. He actually had gone back to school too. He's a bit of a savant. He's a musician. He does graphic design. He was there for computer science like me and just did a lot of different things. And I thought he was interesting. So we became friends, ended up becoming colleagues at an employment place. And so we started having these conversations. He had a daughter. I have 3 children myself. And we realized that we were having these conversations around raising kids in a digital world. And we came to understand that we were digital immigrants, maybe the last generation of digital immigrants. And we were tasked with raising digital natives. And that was that was a unique point in history. And we thought, well, we should start a podcast about it because that's what everybody's starting to do, at least in tech circles. So we did. And we started having some amazing conversations on there. Started out with just he and I. About episode 6, we started including the kids, little clips of the kids at the beginning, little outros at the end. And then we started getting into the realm of guests. And, guest interviews were amazing. Really, really love that. As we talked about, you get the opportunity to have access to people and learn from people and ask questions of people you wouldn't necessarily be able to without the platform of the podcast. So really enjoyed that and that experience for about 3 years.
It's pretty ironic. I was talking to somebody the other day and I was telling them the same thing. I was probably one of those last generations which came out of college right before the real advent of computers, so to speak. I was a batch where I had to learn computers a little bit on my own before I went on to take another master's degree. And they were second nature for many of the people by then. So you're absolutely right about that immigrant and native aspect of it.
Yeah, and it was a bit of a challenge too. I think through doing the podcast, we gained a large amount of humility because what we realized is we don't have the answers. I think for generations before, there was a bit of a cookie cutter. There was sort of a parenting paradigm, but there wasn't access to information. There wasn't access to all these things that could help you be better. And the challenges that the kids nowadays are facing, I think it was a little bit arrogant for me to believe I understood where they were coming from. So the humility aspect of it really helped me to empathize with the kids and learn a bit and really bring myself myself, because before you can be humble, you really can't open the door to learning in your mind. If you already think you know everything, it's very difficult to learn new ideas and new approaches. So that really, I think, changed me as a parent. And it was a real effort to do the show, but it had made a lasting impact on me as a father.
Awesome. So you ran that for about 3 years, right?
We did. Mm-hmm.
Is it still continuing or did you guys sunset it?
So it's actually, we pod faded, and hopefully this doesn't happen to you. The term for those that might not be familiar is when you just get worn out. And I'll tell you, at first we were going to take a break. And as a warning to anybody that's going to take a break from a podcast, be careful, because a week turns into a month, turns into 6 months. It's very, very quick to fall out of the habit of it. But it became a challenge because there was a lot of effort, as you know, in creating a podcast, particularly one where you want to get a good guest, multiple good guests. There's a lot of effort in discovering those, and connecting with them, all the coordination around it. And that combined with the other aspects of the show it got to the point where I was talking about being a great dad and it was taking me away from being a good dad. So I had to just take a break. That said, we're looking to maybe kick that off here in the future and maybe revamp it as we buy back some of our time.
All right. So what do you think were the lessons you learned going through that phase of podcasting?
Persistence was one big one, because to do a show for 3 years, mostly week in, week out, and consistency is a big deal with a podcast if you want it to be successful and not just, it was a hobby, but we had people who really did impact them in their life and they look forward to it. So there was a responsibility there. And it really helped me with persistence. I think growing up with math and science, as I mentioned, some of that came a little easy to me, so I didn't always learn how to really apply myself as well as maybe I should have. But with the podcast, there's no shortcuts. You have to do the work, period, week in, week out. If you want it to be quality, you really have to do your research. You have to do your diligence. You have to put the outline together, and you really need to come off well with the guest and to really provide value to the audience. It takes a lot of persistence to do that.
And then how about, you mentioned digital immigrants and digital natives. So from that aspect, what do you think was eye-opening, or what did you learn from your experience?
The pace of things is very different now, and access to things. There was one episode we did, actually episode 11, and this is actually online now. We put it back online and hosted it again. Episode 11, my son wanted to watch some shows, and he said, he always can't watch these shows because we haven't had the talk. So we did an episode where we actually did a bunch of clips around that talk. But what was interesting there, through those conversations, I recorded him and me, I recorded me and my dad, I recorded me and my wife talking about it. And one of the poignant things my wife realized was that we can't protect, there's technology which is putting things in his face that didn't happen for us as digital immigrants, but also his friends with technology. So it's pervasive, it's ubiquitous, it's inescapable to a certain extent. And so instead of trying to protect our kids from the world, and it doesn't mean we just open up all the doors, but we want to equip them to live in a different world. And that was a paradigm shift for me.
That's pretty amazing. That's an episode I should check out.
It was a lot of fun. It was vulnerable though. So
all right. So at what point did Poddit, the idea of Poddit, come about? Poddit is your platform around connecting guests. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was actually scratching our own itch. I think, like I mentioned, part of the reason why we stopped doing Digital Dads was the effort involved. And again, we get to the end of it, and I won't call out particular episodes, but through that last year, there were some times where we took guests just to fill slots. And I wish we didn't do that, but the effort to find the right guests and connect with them was high, considering I had a family and a career and everything else. And I didn't like that. That never sat well. And again, it kind of caused us to pod fade all around. So at some point down the road, the idea, I guess, percolated in my mind or just kind of kept bothering me. And again, my co-host, Andrew Curry, was also a computer science guy. We had people we knew in the tech industry. And we finally said, this problem needs to be solved. And we're the people that should be solving it. I don't know if you ever really, that dawns on you, or you think a problem is too big for you, or you should be the one, but sometimes you are the one that needs to step up and make the change. And that's what we're trying to do.
How long have you guys been doing this, and how's it going?
So we worked on it for about 1.5 to 2 years before we got to the beta launch, and we're doing this around careers. We have now grown to a team of 5, and we went out to MapCon about a week ago, actually, and did our beta launch. So it's brand new right now, and the receptivity and the love we're getting from people it's amazing, because I think that this pain point is resonating with people. I think they realize what we're trying to do. They realize how awesome this could be for them. And also, we do have a couple of paid tiers on the guest side, but we made a really considered effort to make sure it's completely free for podcasters, and also that the free tier for guests was really good, because when we did our show, we had people like university professors and sometimes like a pediatrician who might not be getting a ROI from a platform like that. So we really want this to become the place where all the guests are, because when I was looking for a guest, I would go to all over the place and it was just a mess to try to find somebody. So we thought, and this is a big goal, but if we could become the de facto place where all the people who have something to share could live, and we could help match them, it would be invaluable to people on both sides.
What does the competition look like in this field?
There's a couple of directory services out there. I think most of them are paid, where essentially if you want to be a guest, you can go be on a wall. Most of them are very flat. Our goal is actually to create a network. So by creating a network where both sides live together, there's a lot of neat things we can do. There's a couple of things like just bells and whistles and features. Like we wanted to embed audio from past episodes. All the things that I would want when I'm a host looking for a guest, I wanted that at my fingertips. So we purposefully built that into the platform. We have like a video you can put there. You can see testimonials from other people, etc. A lot of little nuances and things. And we're beta launch, so we're continually adding, and we have a bit of a bigger plan for this phase. And actually a really big vision we may or may not get into. But yeah, so really just trying to differentiate ourselves. At first, I was really looking at the competition, I'll be honest, Rajiv. But then I started saying, I'm not really worried about what they're doing, because none of them are solving the problem that I think we should solve. So I really got laser focused on just looking at what we're doing and how we should solve the problem. And to be honest with you, I stopped paying a whole lot of attention. I know they're out there. I know they have various approaches. I personally think they're kind of all in the same bucket, whereas long-term vision, we're trying to build a network for the long tail of content creators, because we know we're better together. I've had small relationships like this one from a podcast interview that impacted me and I learned from in a huge way. And the podcast guest relationship is one aspect of that. But as we grow, we really want to dig into connecting people and helping them be better by those relationships. So it's a lot bigger vision. This is the first step of it. And it certainly is purpose built for that. But we really have an idea of where we want to go that isn't even the same thing as like some of these other directory sort of things or email lists, etc.
When you look at the podcast guest aspect of it, or, finding guests, most of it is, I think today it's done in groups, social media groups, Facebook groups, that kind of stuff. There are companies out there that will tell you that they will promote you and they will feature you as guests. They're doing the same thing. They're going after the same groups. They're also trying to find the same podcasters. Obviously they charge you for it, but, they're on the other end, they're trying to find podcasts where you can be featured. And with the growth in the industry, and I'd like to hear from you on what you think about it. Obviously there's growth in the number of podcasts that are showing up every day, the number of listeners going up. And then I'd like to hear a little bit more about what do you think in terms of monetizing podcasts, because that still seems to be nascent territory in terms of monetization of podcasts for various people.
Yeah, I mean, podcasts are definitely growing, and that's part of the reason why we're creating this is we know that it's a growing problem in the market. And ultimately, management is an issue. But in terms of podcast monetization, we in Digital Dads we had, again, it's tough because you really have to grow a large audience. If your goal is, and I think a lot of people start this way, if your goal is to create a podcast and you think you're going to grow this massive audience and you think you're going to monetize through ads or Patreon or something like that, I don't think that's ultimately going to be worthwhile for most people. I know that's going to run contrary to, and I've just been around and I've kind of seen this. A lot of people are chasing that and a lot of them don't ever seem to get there. What I have seen work is a couple things. One, people do it for their passion, or two, people do it as a part of almost like a lead funnel or some way for people to establish themselves as an authority, and they have other avenues for monetization. I do know a few who have broken through, but if you're talking about strict ad revenue, the numbers you need are, 20, 30, 40,000 per episode downloads. And with a growing market and increasingly bigger long tail and further niches, it can be done. but buckle up and don't think you're going to do it in 3 months, 6 months, a year. You got to be in it for the long haul. You got to be, willing to learn and grow and stretch. And it's tough. It's a tough game. But I think as part of a bigger strategy with some other pieces, I think it can be really, really effective.
Coming back to Poddit, how do you see that different from the current avenues, the different groups that are out there for finding guests, where guests show up and so do podcasters? How is it different, and what else can people look forward to from Poddit?
So it's different a couple of reasons. One, you're scattered all over multiple social groups or social channels or people coming at you in email, etc. And you still have to manage it. One of the things we're looking to launch here in the next few weeks is, like, let's say you go, you have your Facebook page, you have your Twitter page. So you create a podcast page. People can see you, they can vet you. Because we're a network and because we're having everybody in the network together and it's purpose built for that, you can manage all of your applications for your show right there. We're going to allow you to have an application process. And for more than that, say whether or not you're currently accepting guests. Right. So you may sometimes be looking for guests and sometimes not. And you can flip that on or off. And then someone can go ahead and apply right there. And you have a list of all these applicants. And not only a list of all these applicants that points to like a Facebook page where is really geared toward, connecting and showing maybe their business, maybe they have an episode and you're bouncing all around the web. This will be a list that ties directly to their profile where you can easily see how they want to position themselves, topics they can talk on, episodes they've been on. You can listen inline, so it's very custom built to save you a ton of effort as a podcaster rather than going through. I mean, we had a lot of effort spent on trying to chase down the right guest. And two, you can browse a network where everybody's kind of together. You can look at categories. The network will eventually begin to have algorithms that help match you. You can see recommendations, testimonials. I think the bottom line is it's purpose built to help connect the right people together rather than purpose built to be just a general social network like Facebook. Facebook can work, but if stuff gets buried in the feed, there's all sorts of challenges that I've had using that. And we have gotten good guests that way. I don't mean to say you can't. I just think this is going to be a much better way and much more effective way to manage it. And to, the nice thing is too, if you create that page, you could then share it out in the groups and funnel everybody back from various groups or Twitter or email to the same place and manage it in one central location without having to recreate that, that post every single time, or did I want to position it this way or that way? You can just have it in one spot.
Makes sense. So personally for you, going from actually running pizza stores, holding a job, so to speak, to kind of being an entrepreneur at this point, and then actually having the vision for it and looking to grow it, what's changed? How's your life changed, and how are you feeling?
It's a roller coaster. They say that entrepreneurs are very bipolar, and I'm currently still sales engineer, so it's tough. You have your highs, you have your lows, you see some comments, feedback. I'll tell you, feedback from people, and you probably experience this too, Rajiv. When you get feedback from someone that says, hey, this really resonates with me, this really matters to me, that's some of the most valuable things. I mean, at some point, we'd love to monetize and be able to do this full time. That's the goal, obviously, because we can then execute and deliver something even better. But in the meantime, the feedback is tremendous, because you have your doubts, and I'll just be candid with you. You have your doubts, you have your moments, and then you have your highs and lows. It can be very extreme. I would say that thankfully I have a very supportive wife and very supportive children who believe in what I'm doing, who see the value in what we're doing, and believe it can really impact a lot of people in a big way. Without that, I don't know if I'd be able to continue going. But with them behind me and the people in the group behind me and the people that see the vision of what we're trying to do, I think that really matters a lot.
Awesome. So just your personal life for that matter, right? Obviously, I'm a big believer that we all end up in something and then we feel our way around and then end up finding our passion and then go pursue it and become successful. So there's a lot of pivoting, and I can see that in your life as well. You started down one path, you decided to go pursue technology, and now you're doing this. So from your standpoint, what have been the pivotal moments in your life? Maybe some high points and low points that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so a high point, although I was like a deer in headlights, as my wife said, I was a pizza manager at the time, and my wife came up to the store to tell me she was pregnant with our first child. That was very impactful moment, as I'm sure a lot of men and women can relate to that. It was heavy. It was heavy. It was amazing, but in that moment, it just felt heavy. And I think, I was fairly young. I was in my early 20s, and it just sort of shifted my mindset into a different place, that it wasn't playtime anymore, that I really needed to be an example for a child. Doesn't mean I didn't mess up past that, but it definitely was a pivotal point. And then, another pivotal point was going back to school. That was really challenging around work and everything else, but got it done. And that was a big victory. And was really happy to get into that field. Had to start kind of all over again, and was new guy, but paid the dues and climbed up a bit. And now jumping into the entrepreneur space too. This is an enormous pivot. This is huge. Maybe partially motivated. I didn't mention, in the tech space, we had a company I worked for was acquired by a much bigger company, one you would know. And we ended up going through a round of layoffs where half of our sales engineer team got let go. We got brought into a room and everybody just got let go. And I still am in the industry. I still love the industry. But even in the tech space, even where you have recruiters hitting you up on LinkedIn all the time, somebody else is in control of your future, and somebody else is in control of your accomplishments and your next level and your path in your career. And that's what I love about the entrepreneur space and podcasting and all these things, is you get to control your own destiny, for better or worse. You're the one steering the ship, and that's exhilarating and gratifying and enormously rewarding. And I would not have it any other way. Even though it's really hard, I would still go at it. And I think that hopefully with Poddit, we've got something that can really, I've always been a very caring type of person. I've just kind of wired that way. And I feel like we've got something that can really impact people's lives in a meaningful way and help them be better together. And I can't stress that enough. That's powerful. My life has been changed by some of the relationships I have made from my podcast, which in hindsight seems bizarre, but it's true. It's absolutely true. And to be able to extend that and to use technology to help facilitate those connections in a better way than maybe a Facebook, in a purpose-built way, that's powerful. So I don't know if we'll get there or not, in full disclosure, but I'm going to go for it as hard as I can because it matters. And I hope other people hearing this will do what they think matters in the world, because the effort is worth it.
Absolutely. And I totally relate to all that you said. So, Brent, what I would like to do is I'd like to ask you a few questions. Just throw them out there, and you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking, but just
Sure.
Tell me whatever comes into your head the first. So, what
Sure.
do you think you're most thankful for?
My family, without a doubt. My kids light up my life. My wife too, but I've never had an experience like having my son and my two daughters. Absolutely, no question.
Great. And what are you most scared of?
Not. It's funny. I thought failure, I thought success, but I think not living a life that matters, being afraid and letting fear prevent me from bringing to the world what I can bring.
And what are you most happy about?
Right now, currently, that we got a beta launch out, because that was a chore. Of course, the family and the friends and the relationships, but in terms of non-relationship type things, I think 100% getting the platform out. I'm very excited about where we're going over the next month or two.
Awesome. And what do you look forward to?
Where we can go with the platform. We got a lot of people really digging in and, helping us guide and direct it. And that's so fun. I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves, because I think I'm even going to be surprised at where it goes from here.
And what would you like your legacy to be?
I would like my legacy to be that I was a man and I cared about people and I had feelings, and that's okay. And that other men out there understand that's okay. That's normal. That's part of being human. It's easier to bottle it up than it is to have courage and actually show that you care about things. And I hope that legacy impacts, because I think those people that care are the ones that change the world. And I hope that becomes part of the masculine narrative as we move forward.
That's a powerful message there, Brent. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. Obviously, I wish you the very best with Poddit. I'd like to see it grow. I'd like to be associated with it, and I'm sure we're going to cross paths more than once. Having said that, before I let you go, what would be the one takeaway that you would have for our listeners?
The one takeaway, I got sucked down into the rabbit hole. I think culturally right now, there's negativity in the United States. And not to get political, because it's not one side or the other, but it bothers me that people are focused on negative right now. And I hope that they will focus on being positive, and optimism. Because when you shift that focus, you pull those things into your life. And I really feel like if individuals we begin to do that, we can change the culture and we can really go somewhere in America, regardless of what party's in. It doesn't really matter. And that's really in separate from what I'm talking about, just on an individual nature, just really focus on positivity and optimism purposefully, because it's not a weakness. It is actually the only way to attract the right things in your life and the right people in your life and to make an impact to people that matters.
You're so right, and I'm sure that resonates a lot with a lot of people out there who are listening as well. Thank you so much, Brent, for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your life, your company. Wish you the very best with Poddit. Hope it grows leaps and bounds. And someday we'll again have an interview where you represent your company's success and where it is.
Absolutely. All the best to you, Rajiv. Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, I hope you liked that episode. Please make sure that you subscribe to Plan B Success and also let your friends and family know that they can subscribe to Plan B Success on their favorite podcasting platform, or you can go to planb.live and check it out from there. Thank you very much.